Ma'am, step back. You're not authorized here.
I am authorized. I have oral
You
arguments.
people don't
at
follow
9.
instructions. ID now.
I'm reaching slowly. You can verify me with judicial security.
You don't look like counsel. Step aside or I detain.
It was just before 8 on a cool morning, the city barely awake, when Judge Eleanor Brooks stepped onto the stone stairs of the federal courthouse. She had her briefcase in one hand, walking with the calm certainty of someone who'd made this journey hundreds of times before. But almost immediately, a courthouse security officer blocked her path. "Ma'am, you need to step back. You're not authorized to be here." He said it without even a hint of doubt, just another instruction in a morning full of them. Brooks stopped, heels clicking together. "I'm authorized to be here," she replied, steady but not confrontational. "I have court this morning." But the officer didn't budge. He shifted, hand resting near his belt, posture tightening in a way that everyone nearby could read. "I asked you to step back. This area is restricted. You people need to follow instructions like everyone else." The words landed with a sharp edge, a phrase designed to close doors, not open them. Judge Brooks took a breath. "I'm here to hear oral arguments. You can verify that with security." She was calm, her movements careful as she reached into her bag for ID. The officer barely glanced at her credentials before handing them back. "This doesn't mean anything to me. You're loitering on federal property. Step aside or I'll detain you." By now, a few people on the steps had stopped to watch. A clerk leaving the building, a couple of young lawyers, someone quietly filming with their phone. "Sir, you're making a mistake. I'm a judge of this court." The officer actually laughed. "Don't lie to me. Judges don't show up dressed like that." Brooks looked down, a gray blazer, slacks, just nothing fancy, just another black woman who, in this officer's mind, didn't fit his image of authority. She tried one last time. "I'm scheduled to hear United States versus Palmer at 9. If you delay me, you're interfering with judicial proceedings." Instead of listening, he stepped closer. "You're interfering right now. Turn around and place your hands where I can see them." The crowd thickened, whispers building. "Is this for real? At a courthouse?" She didn't shout or step back. She just stood still, eyes on the officer, already knowing logic had left the conversation behind. "You're detaining me without cause," she said, quiet but clear. "Every second of this is being observed." The officer reached for his handcuffs, the metallic sound echoing off the marble. The courthouse, meant to stand for law and order, she was now a backdrop for something deeply wrong. If you're watching this, think about how many times you've seen someone be second-guessed, overlooked, or dismissed because they didn't fit the expected mold of authority. Let me know in the comments, have you ever been mistaken for less than you are, or seen someone else go through it? Decades before she ever wore a judge's robe, Brooks was used to waiting outside closed doors. She grew up in Baltimore, daughter of a postal worker and a hospital orderly. She learned early which doors opened automatically and which ones required credentials, and even then, sometimes, a fight. She'd studied at night after work, graduated top of her class, then on to law school and clerkships where the judges would mispronounce her name but rely on her research. She became a federal prosecutor, fighting corruption, civil rights abuses, and police misconduct. She built a reputation for letting the facts do the talking. Never her voice, always her precision. When she was nominated to the Circuit Court of Appeals, the hearing lasted 3 days. Senators grilled her on temperament, impartiality, and whether she could separate empathy from law. She answered with calm, citations, and precedent, eventually confirmed by a narrow margin. The headlines called it historic. The subtext was obvious. She'd always be under the microscope. Brooks didn't show up to work with security or a robe or any of the visual armor people expect. She believed justice should be ordinary, unremarkable, something you could walk up to and talk to. She showed up early, briefcase in hand, blending in. But that morning, while Officer Daniel Reeves was standing in the way, Reeves had been with security for 9 years, hired young, praised for being proactive and assertive. His record also included notes about a lack of discretion and escalations over minor things. Complaints had been filed. A public defender, a janitor stopped twice in 1 week, while white contractors passed freely, but nothing stuck. No body camera footage, no witnesses willing to fight the system. His confidence grew from that pattern. Question first, verify later, and trust his instincts above all else. That morning, Reeves had been briefed about heightened security. Remain alert, challenge unfamiliar faces. The discretion was his. And when he saw Brooks approaching alone, no badge out, no entourage, something just didn't feel right to him. He didn't recognize her. So to him, he saw she didn't belong. But Brooks was no stranger to this dynamic. She'd seen it in courtrooms, written about it in opinions. The eyes that narrow, the decisions made before evidence arrives. As the seconds ticked by, both their histories shaped the moment. One spent a lifetime proving she belonged. The other told his instincts were always good enough. Back on those courthouse steps, the situation was turning into a spectacle. Brooks knew how this ended. Comply now, maybe correct it later. Resist and it would escalate. She chose her words carefully, knowing perception mattered just as much as authority. But the officer felt the pressure too. The crowd, the possibility of being wrong. He was already in too deep to back out without losing face. Step back now, hands visible, he barked, raising his voice. Brooks shifted her briefcase. I didn't move her feet. I'm entering a federal building where I preside. You can confirm my identity with the clerk's office. She pulled out another card, this one with the seal of the federal judiciary. He barely looked at it. Anyone can make that. Step aside. By now, a young clerk recognized her and whispered to someone, That's Judge Brooks. Another lawyer spoke up. She's on the docket this morning. Reeves ignored them, radio in hand, but hesitated. He'd already gone too far to admit a mistake. Turn around, he ordered. Brooks didn't resist. She didn't even raise her hands. She looked at him, calm, disappointed, certain. You are making a public mistake, and you are being recorded. Reeves snapped the cuffs on. Sharp, final. Gasps rippled through the crowd. He took her by the arm and led her inside. Down a side corridor meant for security incidents, away from the morning crowd. The hallway was stark, disinfectant, old paper, maintenance carts, portraits of past judges, mostly stern white men, lining the walls. Brooks saw her own portrait on a higher floor. She noticed the irony deep in her chest. Inside the security office, Reeves told her to sit. She complied, the cuffs glinting under fluorescent light, the chair cold and uncomfortable. He avoided her eyes, notepad in hand, but unsure what to write. Brooks closed her eyes, not in fear, but calculation. Time, location, witnesses, failure to verify, unlawful detention, all forming in her mind. Outside, voices argued. A security supervisor, a clerk insisting she was a judge. Reeves stiffened. The door flew open. A senior official rushed in, eyes widening at the cuffs. What's going on? Reeves sputtered something about suspicious individual, refused to comply. The official looked at Brooks, then back at Reeves. Do you know who this is? Brooks met his gaze. Yes, you do. The man exhaled, grabbed his radio. We have a problem. A serious one. For the first time, Reeves looked unsure. The camera blinked on, uncaring. The room shrank. Judge Brooks sat, waiting, knowing the worst was over and consequences were coming. The supervisor came back, posture changed. Remove the cuffs, he said, tone leaving no room for debate. Reeves hesitated, then unlocked them. Brooks flexed her wrists, red marks already visible. The supervisor apologized, though his eyes never left Reeves. Another man entered, a chief marshal. One look at Brooks, then Reeves. I'm deeply sorry, Judge Brooks, he said. She nodded, noting the time. Please note the time, 8:21 a.m. The chief marshal turned to Reeves. You were instructed to verify credentials. Why wasn't that done? Reeves stammered, claiming the credentials looked fake. On what basis? The chief marshal pressed. She did not match expected appearance. Silence. Expected appearance of whom? Reeves had no answer. A clerk rushed in. The courtroom was waiting. Brooks picked up her briefcase. I will proceed to the bench. This matter will be addressed afterward. She walked out, staff stepping aside, heads lowered. Reeves stayed behind alone. By midday, the security footage was locked down, statements being collected, phones ringing in offices that never expected this kind of news before lunch. By the end of the day, the chief judge was briefed. The administrative office requested a full report, and an investigation was opened. Reeves was placed on leave before his shift ended. Brooks finished her hearing that morning, her questions just as precise, her rulings measured. The only sign of the ordeal was the red marks at her cuffs when she shuffled her papers. But the story didn't stay inside the courthouse. By the next morning, a bystander's 30-second phone clip was online. No narration, no captions. Just a black woman blocked at a courthouse entrance and the sound of handcuffs closing. It went viral, picked up by legal blogs, then the media, then social platforms where outrage spread fast. Attorneys, law students, former clerks, everyone recognized the moment. This could have been anyone, the comments read over and over. Brooks never gave interviews. I never made a public statement. She let her lawyers handle it, filing a precise complaint, unlawful detention, failure to verify, Fourth Amendment and equal protection violations, supervisory negligence, all backed up by video, witness statements, and security logs. The courthouse reviewed its own procedures. The federal judiciary issued a memo, mandatory credential verification, de-escalation training, and supervisor notification for any detention involving court personnel. Training sessions were scheduled. Reeves was interviewed. He blamed confusion and instinct, but neither survived the evidence or the witnesses. His prior complaints were reopened and examined in a new light. 3 weeks later, the findings were public. Reeves had violated protocol, failed to verify, escalated without cause, and detained a federal judge based on appearance, not facts. He was fired that day. The settlement followed, quiet but symbolic. Brooks gave the funds to judicial education and civil rights training, not keeping a dollar. What lasted wasn't just the legal outcome, but the precedent, the cultural shift. The video clip was added to training for courthouse officers and discussed in law schools. Judges referenced it when talking about how authority and perception are tied together and how easily things can go wrong. Officer Reeves never worked in courthouse security again. His applications elsewhere went unanswered. Brooks went back to her routine: early mornings, heavy dockets, careful opinions, but something had changed. The courthouse steps felt different. Officers checked more carefully. Yes, the idea that authority has a single look had been challenged right where it mattered. What happened on those steps wasn't complicated. Under the Fourth Amendment, detaining someone requires reasonable suspicion based on facts, not instinct, not a hunch, not a stereotype. When Brooks showed her credentials, protocol demanded verification, not dismissal. By escalating instead, Reeves turned a stop into an unlawful detention. The law doesn't excuse mistakes because of authority. It demands higher standards. But the bigger problem was bias, not loud, not obvious, but quietly decisive. The assumption that power looks a certain way, wears a certain uniform, has a certain face. When those expectations aren't met, suspicion creeps in. That's how bias works. Not always with hate, but with certainty, without evidence. Brooks understood this long before it happened to her. She'd ruled on cases where officers claimed instinct and courts required facts. But that day, she was on the steps, subject to the same assumptions as anyone else. That's why her story matters. If a federal judge can be detained at her own courthouse, credentials ignored, authority questioned, then none of us are truly protected by status alone. What matters is procedure, accountability, and the presence of witnesses willing to record and speak up. If you ever find yourself in a similar situation, remember, stay calm, speak clearly, ask for the legal basis, present ID. Once, request a supervisor, and document everything if you can. Demeanor doesn't make a detention legal or illegal. The standards do. Justice came for Brooks not because she was important, but because the system was forced to look at itself, forced to follow its own rules. Those courthouse steps are still there. People walk them every morning. But now more eyes are watching. And the lesson is clear. Justice isn't about who shouts the loudest, but who insists that the rules matter for everyone, no matter what they look like.